Hello, Virginie. Hello, Facebook. Hi, Virginie. We'll give a few more minutes in case other people are joining. Kathy, I really appreciated your share on Facebook. It's very beautiful and pertinent.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I keep getting my times mixed up. One week I went to join the Saturday yoga class and realized it was only Friday. And then the next week I went to yoga class, but I went at 9:30 instead of 8:30. Oh. So I've been doing the yoga classes, the recordings on YouTube, which has been great.
Good.
And then with the contemplation last week, I went in on Sunday. I thought I'm going on Sunday and realized it was changed to Wednesday. So.
Yeah, I changed it to Wednesday because I think Sunday evening isn't always a great night for people. Yes, and it is hard to know what day it is with the different pressures of our lives right now.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Well, that's good. I've been trying to keep track on the calendar to realize what day it is.
Yeah. Yep. So let's start. Hi, Janice on Facebook. Let's start. So we'll sit for a moment to arrive. I'll speak for a bit and then we'll sit in meditation together. So make sure you have a comfortable way to sit, but certainly for the first part, there's no need to formal meditation position. So in whatever way you're sitting, simply close your eyes. And use the first moment or two here to arrive. It means to bring your attention into the body and feel the space you are sitting. Tune into the breath. Simply notice the breath moving in the body. Relax the jaw. Soften the eyes. Take a moment to consider and perhaps articulate silently to yourself the intention that pulls you to be present together at this time. And then with your next exhalation, join your hands together at your heart. And we'll Om together once. Take a deep breath in. Bow your head to your heart. Release your hands. Lift your head. Gently open your eyes. So tonight, I want to talk about acceptance in the context of yoga and the yoga tradition. Very early on in my yogic practice, teachers articulated very clearly that yoga was a path of transformation. And for many years, I interpreted that as that I would be able to transform all the things that I didn't like about myself or the imbalances in my body that I experienced, things that I had judgment about or evaluated often from a critical standpoint. And despite focus and attention and years of practice, many of those things on that list didn't change. At the same time, change happened. And one change in particular is that I recognized through the course of these first few years of practice how much I held my breath. And because I had no agenda for that recognition, change happened. I simply recognized that I had this tendency to hold my breath. I accepted it, and I continued on with my focus to change these things that I did not like about myself or that I felt were imbalanced or imperfect even. So that recognition that the change in the breath happened simply from accepting that my tendency was to hold it is, I think, a key that I'd like us to explore a little bit more. One of the ways that we translate the Sanskrit word yoga, or a common way, is that we translate it to mean union. And it does mean union. And specifically, it means union in the context of bringing together previously separate parts or items. Perhaps more accurate translation would be to yoke together. And a team of oxen or horses, when you put the team together and you harness them together, they have greater power and efficacy and strength than each animal separate. And the combined power is greater than the sum of those two parts. So their capacity to generate force and power is greater than the sum of the two animals coming together. A lot of context for us when we look at how we shut off, push away, or separate various parts of ourselves or aspects of our personality or experiences from the whole. So the recognition that the word yoga, and therefore a key element of the practice, is this harness all of the aspects of ourself that we have separated off, cut off, failed to recognize, or consider imperfect, incomplete, unacceptable in some way. The word for wholeness in Sanskrit is purna, and it's translated in English with several words that combined give us purna. So it means wholeness, completeness, fullness, and perfection. Perfection in the sense of perfectly whole, perfectly complete, full, and not needing anything else to complete it or to make it whole. The yoga tradition says very clearly that that is each of us, that we are whole, complete beings, and that we don't need to add anything to us to that sense of perfection of being, that whole complete recognition. In fact, often what we need to do is release the tendencies to separate off or to think that we are missing something. Weaving together all of the parts of ourselves, in order to weave together all of the parts of ourselves and these various aspects of ourself, as well as all of our emotions, which some emotions more easily than others, and feel some emotions more fully than others. We also allow ourselves to experience certain tastes of life, certain aspects of our daily experience more easily and more fully and more completely than others. So in order to weave together all aspects of ourself, I'm coming to that a key element to that is, and it's the acceptance that means that we don't need to change, and that there's no critique or evaluation or judgment around the experience. So one of the ways that we can practice accepting is to recognize, of course, when we're moving away from an experience, when we're moving away from an emotion, when we're moving away from a opportunity to explore our experience. A teaching in the tradition is that we are to move toward anything that comes into our awareness. So an emotion, whether that's an experience, whether that's an aspect of our physical being, that when we become aware of it, all that's needed is to simply accept that that is present in our awareness. And with that acceptance, we can move toward the experience and allow it to be as present as it needs to be, in as fully as we can. And then in that process of moving toward, of accepting, and of taking it in fully, any necessary shift happens more or less on its own. So we don't have to drive the transformation or the change, but the change happens naturally. So earlier I had mentioned that I recognized how much I held my breath early in my yoga practice. And I recognized how much I held my breath in the context of the physical practice of yoga. And then I also became aware more and more over time of how much I held in other moments. I held my breath when I was eating. I held my breath when I was nervous. I held my breath when I was excited. I held my breath when I was happy. I held my breath when I was angry. I held my breath when I was sad. I held my breath a lot. And simply noticing that that was my tendency and accepting it created an opening that invited the shift to happen really more or less on its own. Meaning, I brought awareness to it. I recognized when it was happening, but I wasn't saying, Mona, you need to stop holding your breath, or you're a bad person because you hold your breath, or you would be a better person if you didn't hold your breath, or you would be a better yogi, or you would do, all of these evaluation or judgment thoughts. I didn't have those around the breath because it wasn't part of my change agenda in yoga. And when I became aware of it, that simple act of becoming aware of it and accepting that that was my tendency shifted everything. So as we become aware of our tendencies, of our particular quirks and foibles, I suggest that instead of thinking that we need to change those, moving toward them and accepting them as we become aware of them is really the key element for any transformation to happen. And so tonight, as we practice in a couple of moments, we'll do a practice of building awareness of our whole, complete, full being context of that total acceptance. One last thing before I see if there's any responses from any of you. I think there's a lot of talk about self-love in the wider yogic and self-help and maybe new age world, and also in the world of psychology. And my current thought about that is that instead of loving ourselves, it might be more to think about accepting ourselves. That I accept all that I am. I accept all aspects of my being. I welcome all experiences. I accept and move toward all of the emotions that rise and then eventually fade in my internal world. And that by focusing on accepting, by focusing on acceptance, love arises. And that the acceptance is perhaps, at least for me, a clearer direction and focus on how we move toward a deeper understanding of our innateness and completeness. Thoughts, comments, or shares?
I have a question, Mona.
Yes.
I was wondering if you could speak maybe a little bit to how the process of yoga asana per se fosters
It's a good question. And to some extent, I think it's a question that we all have to find our own answer to. So I'll speak more from my process. One of the key elements for me around cultivating acceptance in the physical practice of yoga has been moving toward and accepting sensation and level of effort that allows sensation to be present, not overly present and not underly present, so that I can move toward the sensation. And that in the moving toward the sensation, there is a natural, if I move toward the sensation and open to it and accept it, there is a natural softening and the capacity to actually eventually move more deeply into any particular pose, as opposed to pushing the body into a shape that my mind was deciding it should do and imposing it on the body as and instead I really think about how the body and the position can work together and how the pose can rise up out of the body instead of being put on the body. So that's one way I think about acceptance in the physical practice. And there was another thought that I had about that right now has left me. So, does that resonate?
Yes, that's very interesting. I would ask the follow-up question and ask you, what is the difference then between acceptance and being in the moment?
I think it's real. I think they're really related.
When you are trying to be.
I think acceptance puts us more fully in the present moment. Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep, completely. Thank you. Other shares or thoughts, comments, or questions?
I was just thinking, sort of as a follow-up to Virginie's questions, that that applies to life too, that idea of where we have an idea of what we should be doing or what we think others are expecting of us, and we try to put ourselves in that. And I've come up with that again recently, where even in my work, doing what I think I should be doing never feels right, but then it also never gets me as far.
Exactly.
When I'm imposing some preconceived notion on it, as opposed to just saying, okay, well, actually, this is who I am, and this is how I do it, and people can take it or leave it. So again, it's coming back to that acceptance of myself first, and then inevitably that sort of takes me in my work, or sort of brings greater success, and certainly, well, success, whatever the definition of success is,
right.
But certainly greater satisfaction and more capacity to go further with it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think you're also speaking to a link there between acceptance and accessing intuition, that when we accept the moment and also all that we are without the good placed on top of that, then there's an openness that can tune us more fully into the intuitive voice, I think. And we can then follow that, which definitely leads toward greater satisfaction and
yeah, it's being in the flow, right? Because if you're more there as your whole, as opposed to just being the parts you think you should be, or hiding the parts you shouldn't be.
yes.
When you're all there, then it's that flow.
And is also really about acceptance, right? I was thinking about, if we're current, if you're in a river and we're moving with the current, there's an innate or an inherent acceptance. The push that we're moving, the push of the current or the pull of the current, we accept that that's carrying us, relax into it, and then guide that position. So if we're like swimming in a fast-flowing river, we're going to swim with the current and then just steer so we miss some of the rocks and bumps along the way, but we're not fighting against it. So there's acceptance is a real key element to that process.
Mm-hmm. And that idea of fighting, like that's, I find in the current, I find the people who are having the most trouble with the self-isolation, physical distancing, and not working the different things, it's the people who are fighting it. People are like, okay, well, this is how it is for now. Those are the ones better able to cope.
Right, and can maybe also even seize the opportunity in it, right? That when we accept the situation as it is, there's more ability to tune into what opportunity is available in that particular situation. Like right now, there's a lot of opportunity if we're going with the situation as opposed to struggling against it.
Mm-hmm. And I think part of that being in the flow is, for the moment, just being still.
Yes.
And not worrying about which way the current is going, and just waiting for the next wave to come and take us where we need to go. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, perhaps there's a link with patience and acceptance.
Yeah.
Not one of my strong points either. Thanks, Kathy. Any other comments or shares or questions? Sit for practice, for meditation. So adjust your seat in any way that is useful. And you don't have to have a formal and rigid upright position tonight. You can stay, it allows you to have a sense of relaxation. As you settle, make sure that you kind of wiggle around, scooch around on your seat enough that the weight of the body settle a little. Relax the belly, and I'm feeling into right now, for me, also a link between acceptance and belly. So as you settle into the seat, let go of all of the holding that we carry in the abdomen. Relax the tops of the shoulders, down away from the hips. Drop the chin just slightly, a hair toward the heart. Completely relax the jaw so that there's space between the back teeth. Relax the lips and the eyes. And now gradually become aware of your whole body. Starting at the toes. Run your attention each foot. Feeling into the sensations and accepting them. Which another way would be to open to or to soften toward the felt feet. And then become aware of the shins, the lower part of the legs. And holding as best you can a sense of the feet. Notice sensations in the lower legs. Accept the sensations. Knees. Upper legs. And feel into the sensations there. Without agenda. Then bring your attention to your hands. Notice the fingers, the palms and the backs of the hands. Feel into the sensations there. Notice the forearms. Pay attention to the sensations in the forearms. Notice the elbows and the upper arms. And then bring your attention to the base of the pelvis. And feel into the base of the torso, the pelvic basin, the lower belly, buttocks. And practice feeling into those areas. Agenda. And opening and softening to your sense of the body as we continue to move through it. Glide your attention up the torso to the abdomen and lower back. Feeling into the mid-belly and the lower back, and notice sensations present. Bring your attention up to the rib cage. in the upper torso and feel the sensations all around the upper half of the torso. The tops of the shoulders, the upper chest, slide your awareness up the neck, feeling into the front, the sides, and the back, and the sensation. The head, and feel into the sensations on the back of the head and across the face and at the top of the head. And now feel into the whole body. And notice how feeling into the whole body is like an expansion of your awareness. So that's instead of staying with one aspect or moving back and forth between more than one, your attention can expand softly in all directions to the whole body. Staying present with the whole body. Become also aware of the complete cycle of the breath. The inhale, a little pause. The exhale, a little pause. And practice weaving together your ability to be present with the complete breath and the whole body. The whole body and the complete breath. Feel the spot right in the very center of you, your heart. Just see if you can access a sense of fullness, aliveness, in the very center of you, while also present with the complete breath and the whole body. Continue to stay with the sense of the whole body, the complete breath, and the fullness at your center. As best you can. Weave those aspects into one perfect, whole, integrated beingness.